BookTube, welcome to Lizzie Faye Loves Books. I'm Elizabeth, and today I want to start a series of videos about all my series. Now this all kind of came about because as I was doing my goal setting, and you may have already seen my goals video, which I have already posted, within my goals for 2017, I have set several lists of books that I want to read, and several of those lists involve series. So while I was thinking about and talking about all of the series that I want to finish, I got started trying to remember all of the series that I have finished, and then I got really overwhelmed looking at all the series that I have started and would like to finish, and then all the other series that I would like to start. So for this video, I'd like to just talk a little bit about kind of my history of reading series and the series that I've finished, and then in future videos we'll talk about the series that I am currently working on finishing. So in my introductory video way back when I started BookTube a couple years ago, and by the way, you're more than welcome to go back and look at some of those old videos. If you're new to my channel and you want to kind of get to know me a little bit, then please go back and look at my BookTube newbie tag, because all of that still applies, except that I'm just a little bit older. I started out, the very first series that I could ever remember reading is the Happy Hollister series by Jerry West. My third grade teacher had some of these books in her classroom, and after I had exhausted all of the storybooks and picture books that she had in her room, she suggested that I start on these Happy Hollister books. And all of hers, the reason I'm showing the one with no dust jacket is the majority of the ones I've collected have no dust jacket, and this is how the books looked in my teacher's room. She had a whole shelf of these, and I remember looking at them as a third grader and thinking, I can't read those. They're huge. And I don't even remember how many of them I read, but I think she let me take one home, and I do remember reading these, and these were my early reading experiences. So as a result, I have collected a few of them in my adulthood. I haven't reread any of them yet, although my daughter Katie, when she was in about the 3rd or 4th grade, she read a couple of them and really enjoyed them. So I was glad that I had them for her, because it was nostalgic for me to reminisce about reading these when I was younger. Now, I think there's about 30 something of these books, and this is not a series that I finished. It's the first series I remember reading, but I don't plan on ever really going back and reading all of them. I have about 12 of them, I think, and I would like to read those at some point, but it's not a goal I have to finish this series at this point. Another series I remember reading very early and on through at least my junior high and maybe even into high school years are the Nancy Drew books. Again, this is not a series that I ever finished, but I read a lot of these. Of course, if you ever look on the back of one of these old classic editions, you'll see the many, many Nancy Drew books that there are in the series, and there's even more than that now. And you know, there was just no way I was ever going to read all of those, but I read a lot of them. This is another series that I don't think I'll ever read all of them, and I don't have any goals to read all of them, but I have very fond, nostalgic memories of reading a lot of Nancy Drew books when I was younger, and I have read a few of them as an adult, and still just thoroughly enjoyed them. Now, the first and only series that I know of that I finished as a child are the Little House books. My mother started collecting these for me at a fairly young age when she would go to her teacher conference every August. She would go to the university bookstore, and she would bring me at least one, sometimes two each year, and then I would read them throughout the year and be ready for the next one by the time she would go again. And I read every single one of these, and then I continued on and read a couple of books that are not even really considered to be a part of the series, but they are continuations, On the Way Home and West from Home, and then some articles that she had published in a farm magazine. Anything I could get my hands on that related to Laura Ingalls Wilder, I read. And I think that I probably read these on up into high school. I don't have any other recollections of what specifically I read in high school other than the stuff I had to read for school, and I don't even remember what that is. And then, you know, I probably still read some Nancy Drew and some Laura Ingalls Wilder. So those are my earliest memories of series. And when I got into college, of course, I had a lot of college reading, and I don't remember really any series that I read during college, except when I was doing my student teaching, I did check out the Lord of the Rings books at the high school library where I was student teaching, and I really enjoyed reading those. In fact, I would read those during my lunch, and then when it was time for me to start working on lesson plans or teach a class, then I still wanted to keep reading instead of, you know, working on my lesson plans. So I have fond memories of the Lord of the Rings when I was in college. I read them again after I got married. These are my this is my husband's set, and then just last year I reread the Fellowship of the Ring, and I've listened to The Hobbit on audio again too. So this is a series that is well loved in my heart. I've just really enjoyed The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, everything that has to do with Middle Earth, and I just think they're wonderful. That's the only thing I really remember reading series-wise in college. Then when I got out of college and I moved to Florida, I worked in a job at as a home economist, extension agent in a small county in Florida, and one of my coworkers recommended Jeanette Oke to me. She was reading Love Comes Softly, and she recommended it to me, and I in turn read it and then recommended it to my mom, who then proceeded to buy me the box set of all 8 books in this series, and I read them all and enjoyed them so much. They're just wonderful stories. In fact, there are movies that I think almost all of these books in the series have a movie based on it. And then because I enjoyed the Love Comes Softly series so much, I had to get the Season of the Heart series, and I love these just as much as Love Comes Softly. Then I also read the Canadian West series. I also really enjoyed these. Maybe not quite as much as the first 2 series, but I read these first 4, which is all that were available at the time. After that time, she added 2 more books to the series, and I'm pretty sure I've read both of those books. But these were just really good. It was about a Canadian mounted policeman and his wife and their life out on the frontier. So now I got my mother into reading Jeanette Oke, and somewhere along that time she got into reading a lot of other Christian fiction, and she joined the Crossings book club, and so she became familiar with Gracelymington Hill. Now, Gracelymington Hill books are not considered a series, so I'm not going to really talk about those right now, but a lot of the reading I did as a young adult when I had first moved to Florida and I was still single, I read a lot of Gracelymington Hill at that point, in addition to the Jeanette Oke that I was reading. Then later on I read another series by Jeanette Oke and T. Davis Bunn called The Song of Acadia, and I really enjoyed those. Now there's another series that I want to start that continues on from there, and it's called The Heirs of Acadia. It's by T. Davis Bunn and Isabella Bunn, and that's a series that I've got on the back burner, but I hope to get to it, within the next couple of years at some point. So then while I was recommending books to my mom, she was also recommending books to me. And I believe it was my mom who first read Anne of Green Gables. She got me started on Anne, and I ended up reading them all from the library, but she insisted on buying me this box set, which has pretty much just stayed in the box because I've not reread them. I might read them at some point, and maybe I can talk Katie into reading them one of these days. I think she picked up the first one and just couldn't get into it because she really just enjoys dystopian fantasy kind of stuff. Maybe someday she'll be interested in looking at pioneer stories, but as a person who loved Laura Ingalls Wilder, this is like, Canadian Laura Ingalls Wilder as far as I was concerned, and I just absolutely love Anne of Green Gables and this entire series. So as a result, I have also read every other series, duology, short story that has been written and published by Lucy Maud Montgomery. She has a trilogy called Emily of New Moon, a duology of The Story Girl, a duology of Pat of the Silver Bush. Anything and everything I could get my hands on that was written by Lucy Maud Montgomery, I have read. Another series that my mother recommended to me are the Mitford series by Jan Karon, and I have read all of the series books up to the current and most recent book, which is Come Rain or Come Shine. There are a few companion books that I haven't read, and I do hope to get to those this year. But as far as the series goes, I have listened to all of them on audio. I would like to reread them in print, but they're just wonderful. Also along that same time, I got interested in reading Beverly Lewis books, and I believe I've read 2 of her series. I read The Postcard and The Crossroads. That's a duology, and then later on I read the Shunning trilogy. Those were really good. Then somewhere along then in my adult life, my sister started recommending books to me, and she's the one that introduced me to Debbie Maycomber. I think the first series she told me about was the Blossom Street series. I was caught up on them at one point, but I think there have been 1 or 2 more that I need to read. But I have read all of the Cedar Cove series, and then there was a new series that kind of continued on from Cedar Cove called Rose Harbor, and that's one of the series that's on my TBR for this year. But I've read all of the Cedar Cove books and thoroughly enjoyed those. I believe I've also read all of the books that have to do with Mrs. Miracle. There's maybe only 2 or 3, but I have read those, and they're so adorable. Along that same time, I think was when I also got started reading Janet Dailey books, and I read all of the Calder saga except the one which didn't come out until like 4 years after the last one, and so I finally got around to reading that just this past year, and really did enjoy it. That was really a fun series to read about a ranch family in Montana. Continue on forward, I eventually, after about a year, I left that extension job and I started working as a theme park performer, and that's where I am still today, in addition to substitute teaching. But for several years I was full-time, and now I'm only part-time. But one of my co-workers, who I started working with like the second year I ever worked there, and she's still one of my co-workers today, she inspired me to read Newbery books. She said that her junior high, middle school language arts teacher had encouraged her to read Newbery winners, and she started reading them, and at that point she had read them all. And I thought, that's a great goal, because I remember the librarian when I was probably in about the 5th grade. I remember going and spending a lot of time at the public library, and the librarian there showed me the Newbery poster, and I ended up reading, I think, Dr. Dolittle and Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim, and I don't know, maybe others, I'm not sure. Those are the ones I remember. And so thinking back to that, I thought, that's a really good goal. So I started looking up Newbery winners, and I started reading them. And so within the Newbery winners, some of those books are series books. So in my efforts to read Newbery winners, I ended up reading some series, like the Giver Quartet. I have read the entire Giver Quartet. I don't have a copy of Sun. I had read all 3 of the first ones a couple years before Sun ever came out, and so I just don't have a copy of it, but I have listened to it on audio. And the Shiloh trilogy by Phyllis Reynolds Naylor. I've read all of those. And then when my kids were small and they would be at story time, and I was kind of in the background of the children's room watching and waiting for them to do what they did at story time, then I noticed the table of audiobooks, and I got started listening to middle grade audiobooks. And so there were several series that I ended up reading the entire series of, like Hatchet and the entire Brian saga. I listened to on audio the entire Peter and the Starcatchers series. I only have 2 of them in print, but I think I have listened to all of the main novels as well as the novellas. I have listened to the entire Chronicles of Narnia as an adult. I did not ever read those as a young person. I have listened to the entire Indian in the Cupboard series and finished them. I thought I had finished the entire 39 Clues series, at least the original series, which at the time I finished book 10, that's all there were, and then they went on to Cahill's versus Vespers, as far as I knew. Then I discovered there's a book 11 called Vespers Rising, so I've got that on my TBR for 2017. Then The Guardians of Ga'Hoole, I love that series. It's about owls. It's like middle grade fantasy. And moving on to YA books, I have listened to all of the Hunger Games on audio. This is my daughter's box set. While I was listening to them on audio, she was reading them in print. And then I've also listened to all of the Divergent books on audio. And this, again, is my daughter's box set. I'm not even sure if she has read 4. It seems like she may have started it. I don't know if she ever finished it. But she has read the main trilogy for sure, and I've listened to all 4 of these on audio. Also, several years ago, I finished the entire Percy Jackson series on audio. So those are everything that I read and finished and listened to before BookTube. Now, since BookTube and Goodreads, I have finished the Matched trilogy. I've also read the entire Heroes of Olympus series. I think I may have started Heroes of Olympus before I got on BookTube and then finished it up in 2015. And then the Morning Shade Mysteries, that's a trilogy by Lori Copeland. Then in 2016, I finished all of the Maze Runner, the last few Maze Runner books, including Fever Code. I finished the last book in the Calder saga, so I could check that one off my list. I finished the 3rd book in the Long Way from Chicago trilogy by Richard Peck. I also read Gregor and the Code of Claw, which is the last book in the Underland Chronicles by Suzanne Collins. And then I had 2 trilogies in 2016 that I read in their entirety. I read the Half Upon a Time trilogy by James Riley and the Child 44 trilogy by Tom Rob Smith. So as far as I can remember, that is all of the series that I've ever finished in my lifetime. Now, I probably am forgetting something, but I just kind of wanted to take inventory of everything I've finished, and I've also got a big long list of all the series that I am actively reading and that I'm interested in finishing. Now, as I was going through Goodreads and some of the stuff I've read, I'm sure that I've read the first in a lot of series that I don't really plan on finishing, so I don't consider those active series. But I have read the first in several other series that I do want to continue on with, and then a lot of series that I've already read, you know, 2 or more. So I've made a kind of a priority list of what I want to get to for 2017. So that will probably be my next video. My next video, I think, will be the top 17 series that I plan to finish in 2017. Then I've got another list of series that I'm working on, and then other series I want to start. So this is going to be kind of a little series of videos about all my series. And now you've seen part 1, which is what I've already read, and I hope you'll come back for the next installment, which is what I plan to finish in the coming year. And that's all I have for this video. I hope you're having a great day. Read a good book, and God bless you.